BBC.
BBC. You're with the BBC. Hello, I'm Bidisha. You're listening to The Strand. Today, Chinese contemporary music plugs in and goes global. The Golden Melody Awards, Asia's version of the Grammys, happen this weekend in Taipei, Taiwan. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, China's World Expo 2010 rolls on until October. China's keen to show that it can export cultural goods, and music is one area where it's starting to make some impact internationally after years of churning out saccharine pop. A New York-based collective from Shanghai's underground electronica scene is putting out a compilation of tracks from independent Chinese artists. Andrew Purcell meets the brains behind the beats.
Electronic music, having had roots in Detroit and Berlin, places of tremendous change, politically, economically, what have you, China's experiencing the same thing right now.
We will not be defeated.
It seems like it would match.
We'll keep on coming back.
Dave Liang records as the Shanghai Restoration Project. He's a Chinese-American based in New York, taking inspiration from the traditional dance bands of the 1930s and fusing that distinctively Chinese sound with hip-hop and house beats. He's also one half of the production team behind eXpo, a compilation of independent Chinese artists.
One thing I've learned in the process is these people are more creative than ever. This will be my 13th year there. My parents live there. I go there 3 times a year. There is this amazing youth culture that's flourishing there.
His Shanghai-based partner, Sean Leow, is one of the founders of Neocha, a Chinese alternative to social networking sites like MySpace and Facebook. It has around 30,000 users, of whom more than 10,000 actively post creative content of their own. At the moment, it's one of the few available outlets for Chinese electronic music. Of the 10 artists on the compilation, only one, internationally recognised techno producer B6, has ever been paid for their work.
The first thing to understand is 95% of the market is absolutely dominated by pop music. It crowds everything out, it owns all of the mainstream airwaves, the TV, everything there. The remaining 5%, and hope growing, is independent music. So that's one big challenge that they face. The second thing is that all of the piracy and changes that the global music industry is going through with the way that digital is changing everything is just exaggerated in China.
YouTube, Facebook and Twitter are all blocked. Sean described it to me as the Great Firewall of China. But MySpace is available and full of Chinese punk, hip-hop and pop bands. The biggest Chinese alternative is Douban, which already has tens of millions of users.
What you hear about in the West constantly is Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, right? But alternatives for all those sites exist, and people do effectively the same things. Yeah. They're just in Chinese language, and it seems that the internet has made China more free in many ways in terms of creative, in terms of these young artists.
I think actually the government is fairly supportive of growing creative industry. Examples of that are they're promoting more creative industry majors like animation and music in colleges. They're opening creative industry zones where it's cheaper to get rent. Specifically in electronic music, no. I mean, it's not even on their radar.
Shanghai's club scene mostly caters for high-status Chinese and expats who want to hear superstar DJs from overseas while they drink their green tea and whiskey. Underground electronica collectives like Antidote and Sansui offer an alternative, but there's only 3 or 4 regular venues they can play at, each holding a few hundred people in a city of 20 million. Listening to the eXpo collection, I was struck by the fact that most of the tracks sounded like they could have been made anywhere in the world. There was very little that was recognisably Chinese about them.
Yeah, I think if you listen to any independent Chinese music that's coming out right now, you'll have the same reaction, whether it's in rock, which has gotten a lot of coverage out of Beijing, I guess some of the hip-hop tracks do use a little bit more Chinese lyrics, but it really comes from the inspiration and influences that these guys are drawing upon, which is predominantly Western.
There were tracks out there that had heavier hints of maybe Chinese opera or Chinese language. Unfortunately, I didn't really like the rest of the production. You have these guys who are very schooled in sort of the Western form of production. And then you have some guys who are so fascinated with Chinese culture, but they can't get the drums right. And this was my big frustration going through it. You have to believe that melds, ultimately. I think this is a beginning step, and I would hope that it's, over time, you'll see it evolve into something more distinctively Chinese.
The eXpo compilation aims to attract attention to the scene, and with luck send a tiny royalties check to the artists for the first time ever. Earning recognition in the West with a distinctively Chinese sound may take a little longer.
The thing about Chinese music, is that the rhythms aren't as consistent. I mean, if you've seen one of those dragon festivals, you know, and you hear the drums, it's usually like dung 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 dung. It's not something that you can get on and you can just sort of groove to immediately. So I think the only way to have Chinese influence is to actually still fuse it into something Western, ultimately.
Andrew Purcell reporting there. You're listening to The Strand, Global Arts and Entertainment from the BBC World Service.